I have a severe mental disorder. Hey, what's up, guys? It's yo boy, back at it again with making another video. Hey, you know what? It's been about 4 months since I made a normal video, and you know, I decided, why don't just let a game come to me, huh? Because for the past few times, it's always been like something's been handed to me. Well, this time I'm just gonna sit here in this chair and wait for nature to come to me, however long it may take. Well, I think I just wasted another video. Thank you for tuning in, and be psyched for my next video coming in 2 months. It's gonna be better than this one, I can assure you. Oh, the camera's still going. Well, I guess we're just got to wait for something amazing to happen, like always. In the meantime, I'm gonna put on some fun hats. And you know what, how about I tell you guys some fun stories about my childhood, huh? Lighten up the mood. I was born... Well, that's peculiar. I don't remember ever having a phone. Well, don't want to be rude. Better answer that. Ah, shit. Hello?
Do you just like making fun of other people's work?
Well, I mean, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but it definitely does beat being original. Who's this, by the way?
Well, I'll tell you what, mister. I am the creator of Nerdbox. And ever since you made fun of our product back in October, I've been plotting your death.
Oh, that's awesome, man!
However, to prevent this from being like Saw, I'm gonna be giving you a second chance. I'm gonna be sending you another Nerdbox, and you better talk about the game that I put in there, cause it's a really good game, man.
Wait a minute. You're telling me that you're sending over another Nerdbox as we speak? Boy, am I excited. Not! That was stupid even for me. Alright, now before we unbox this, he did mention that there was a lot of fragile stuff in here, so we gotta be very careful on the way we unbox this. Just so, you know, we don't break anything. These like baby scissors. Who am I kidding? I can't hurt a fly with those. Alright, let me go ahead and reel off everything that's in here. We got teeth, sour Skittles, ugh, glass shards, the ashes of the short-lived TBS program, Trust Me, I'm a game show host, rusty guitar strings, syringes that were probably found on a beach, rum ham, and maybe something interesting. Well, that's definitely very interesting. Let me just put my hand in here and see. Oh my god, this is very interesting. It's Pokemon Fire Red. Now we can start the video.
Oh man, it's Pokemon! This is the one thing that a childhood cannot be complete without. Well, that, and a dad. Pokemon has become one of the most popular and iconic series of all time that has spawned so many things ranging from dozens of games, a trading card series, toys, food probably, and even a TV show that is somehow still going on. Now I've been playing Pokemon since I was around 3, and because of my vast knowledge with this series, I know there's always something to have us as players and fans of the series to come back to playing these games. And with each new installment, it gives us just that, because Pokemon games have a sort of interesting cycle I've noticed. A new game will experiment with something like game mechanics, or with one of those weird-ass minigames that's supposed to make your Pokemon like you more. Alright, when I've enslaved a poor little animal inside of a ball to fight for me unwillingly, I'm gonna be blatant and say, I don't give a rat's ass about how my Pokemon think of me. You know why? It's because they can be replaced in an instant. But then the game will expand upon and flesh out something that Game before it experimented with. Each installment revises on what the last one did, and that's a really smart thing to do. Which is why, even though the series is in the 7th installment, a lot of people think that the newer games are better. Do you know how hard that is to say about something? It's nearly impossible to find a long-lasting series where its newer stuff is better than its older stuff. Simpsons joke. However, there's another reason why people think this, and that's because some of the older games have a lot of problems. Ah, shit. That's probably some pissed off Gen 1er trying to impale me with a giant wooden stake. Now look, before anybody gets angry, know that the early Pokemon games had some justifications for their problems, because they were incredibly ambitious ideas that no one had ever attempted before in the past. So the developers didn't have a sort of reference point when making these games. Now that's not to say all of their problems are excusable. In fact, Generation 1 had a lot of them, such as ugly Pokemon sprites, being very slow and clunky with controls, psychic Pokemon being absolute gods, critical hits being based off of Pokemon's speed, and special stats being an absolute joke. I'm just saying it's slightly understandable in some areas because of the time and because of the situation. But the developers realize this as well, and so to compensate for this, they'll completely remake a generation during the downtime between new games. And good God, these are some of the best remakes of all time, because actual care is put into them instead of just giving a game a fresh coat of paint to make people feel nostalgic and giving companies a quick buck. So far, the first 3 generations have been given this honor, and it was really hard to pick which one I wanted to look at for this video, because I knew I wanted to talk about one of them because of what they do right as remakes. But then I just thought screw it and said, why not just do Fire Red, because it remade the worst generation, and also because I got like 12 years of experience with this game, and also because the other remakes were on the DS, so the footage would look weird depending on who I'd steal it from. Wait, do we start? Ah, okay. When someone wants to get into a long-running game series, it can be considered hard to find a starting point and then continue on afterwards. But you know, that's kind of a problem, since like the only solution that a lot of people would give you is just to play like the most popular one in the series. And while that's an easy resolution, there just isn't something special about doing that. Mainly because you're depriving yourself of starting your journey in a unique way. You know, let's set the stage for a little skit right here. It's like if Chaz here wanted to start playing Zelda, but then his friend Raul shows up and he's like, dude, you gotta play Ocarina of Time first. Gotta play Ocarina of Time first, mate. You gotta play Ocarina of Time first. Then he slaps that game running through the Dreamcast, and now Chaz is stuck, playing a game that, yes, is good. But it may not have been the ideal way Chaz here wanted to start getting into Zelda. Maybe he wanted to try Twilight Princess first, or maybe even A Link Between Worlds, or even Squidward Sword, who knows? Now, if you want to start a series with the most popular game in the lineup, then that's fine, go right ahead. I'll just be sitting here in this dark corner with my legs twisted like this and judge your decision in a really passive-aggressive way. When in my mind, I'm gonna be critiquing you harder than Chef Ramsay's. Big face! But what I would recommend is to play the game that's most friendly to new players. It should teach the ins and outs without being a complete tutorial fest and making the game slower and less enjoyable as a result. And it should also do something like be simple, but not boring. And all those things that I just mentioned are what Fire Red and Leaf Green do better than almost any game in the entire series. And there's a lot of nice things that these games do that would go unnoticed to someone playing this for the first time. And so that's what this video is for. So, if those transition slides would show up, I think we can get on our way. So because it's a remake, it has to prove itself to be one. And unsurprisingly, it does, in a lot of ways. First off, a complete graphical redesign. Everything looks so much better. The original Red and Blue were kind of meh. We're kind of meh visually because of the console it was released on. I mean, it's decent, except for the battle sprites, which, like I said earlier, were just ew. Fire Red recreated all these areas and made them look interesting and stand out from one another, as well as having some very good looking Pokemon sprites. Like for a 14-year-old game, some of these still hold up very well. Oh, but that's not all. If you don't know, Pokemon games usually have a standard and a post game. The standard game is beating the gyms and becoming the champion, while the post game gives the player different areas to explore with more things to do related to the story and to catch other Pokemon outside of your region. Well, Fire Red has a very interesting post game. After beating the Elite Four, you're given more areas to explore in the form of the 7 islands, which also hold more challenges, puzzles, and even Pokemon from the second generation. This was a significant upgrade from the post game in the originals. See, in Red and Blue, the only thing for the post game you could do was to catch Mewtwo. Did that really seem like enough for the people who played the originals? I mean, the games will hint that he's this dangerous experiment that's like evil, I guess. And honestly, that made it kind of exciting to finally fight him because of this. And when you finally got to him, it was like the coolest thing. Until you realized that you could just throw a Master Ball at it, and then it's just over. That's it. No more battles with Gary? No more gyms to beat? Nothing. But then with every gen after this, the creators decided to give the players some more fun by rewarding them with more to do. And because of this, post-games have become a staple in the series, and even though some gens aren't that great, people still always look forward to them after completing the main game. Oh, and the game also added steel types, more legendaries including the legendary beasts, breeding, an ungodly larger amount of backpack space, the versus checker, rematch of the Elite Four, Pokemon now having their own natures, the ability to hold items, and even genders.
It's Genders of 2016 XD.
So as you can see, Fire Red added and fixed so much stuff from the original games. And I could go into detail talking about every little thing it changed because that's what a sane person would do when talking about a remake. But that's not what I'm doing. Instead, I want to talk about some things that make Fire Red great that, honestly, I feel like a lot of Pokemon games even to this day don't do as well. So sit back, relax, and prepare for blind biases from yours truly. The first thing Fire Red does incredibly well is that it gives the player a lot of independence. See, the game doesn't waste its time having the player sit through a bunch of tutorials and text boxes saying how every little mechanic works, what type counters what, and how items work. When a game does this, it strips the player of having the experience to learn these things on their own. Cause doesn't it feel more rewarding to learn that Pokemon are easier to catch with lower health by doing it yourself rather than just having a text box say it? So the game will give you a few pointers here and there, but it doesn't feel forced. It'll usually just be a friendly tip or cool trick that you didn't know before. However, if you do need help with something, the game does give you answers to any questions you may have with just a simple click of the L or R button. This menu is an amazing idea to give to the player because it's not something mandatory that everyone needs to use. It's just there in case you need to remember something like a type counter. Nowadays, games can hold the player's hand too much when describing how controls work or a certain type of gimmick. And that's becoming a real problem because people who play these games will start to become more dependent on games explaining themselves. Now, the game shouldn't act like it broke a flower pot with its baseball bat, and the player looks down upon it like a dad and says, "Explain yourself." Instead, give the player a few hints and tips on what to expect from this game, and then set them off on their own. And you know what? Here comes a little mini rant. Even though Sun and Moon can be argued as the best gens at the moment, I gotta say, their beginnings are ungodly slow. They treat the player like they've never played a game in their life. And I can understand where this is coming from because this is probably a lot of kids' first Pokemon game, but don't water it down for everyone. At least with Kirby Superstars tutorial asked, "Oh hey, have you ever played this game before?" And I would click yes, because I know how to play video games. But then everything after that is beautiful, and you haven't played Pokemon Sun and Moon yet, then who dropped you when you were a baby? With Fire Red, it gives you that perfect blend of not having to rely on the game to progress, but with the option to do so if needed. And aside from the move counters, there really isn't much to learn about this game. Why is that? Well, Fire Red is a game that knows what it wants to do and makes it simple enough for the player not to become overwhelmed. You see, this game is such a good entry point in this series because this was at a point where Pokemon games weren't as, large as newer installments from Gen 4 and above. I say they're large because they have a lot more content than compared to these ones. Now, more content sounds good, but in terms of these, a new player won't be able to take advantage of them, with things like the number of Pokemon, how you can take care of them, different forms of evolution, migration between games, and even some very rare cases of story elements. Fire Red's main game doesn't have all these that the player may have to devote a lot of time learning about. And sure, the post games add a lot more to it, but since Fire Red is a remake of the originals, it took what they had and just trimmed the fat to keep it consistent. But since it's a simple game, that doesn't mean it's boring or anything, because some people may interpret a game being simple as it being bland and boring. And no, it's not. It just focuses on the main game more instead of gimmicks to make it stand out, or taking something from a previous generation and fixing it up like I talked about with the cycle earlier. The main focus of this game was to recreate the originals in the best way the developers could. And I want to stress that nostalgia isn't created my opinion for me, but I think they created one of the best Pokemon games of all time. Now that could be considered a bold-ish claim, but dude, I've been so careful with the script, I just wanted to prove how well Fire Red does its shit. Now some could argue that the Gen 2 and 3 remakes are better because they were remakes of better games. And yeah, I can agree at a technical standpoint that they're better than Fire Red because of their functionality and length, but it's honestly hard for me to compare the remakes to one another. Now granted, I did that in the top 10 remakes video, but that video was complete trash, and I'm not joking when I say that I forget I made it sometimes, even though it was a collaboration. It's hard because Gold and Silver had more than Red and Blue, and Emerald had more than Gold and Silver. And because of that, each game gets bigger and bigger as time goes on because of the system it's released on. I don't know, I just like Fire Red a lot because of how much it fixed the games it remade. Sure, the other remakes did a great job fixing their originals' problems, but Fire Red did it at a greater extent since the originals were flawed to an ungodly extent. Sure, you can say what you want about Gens 2 and 3, but they're not broken like Gen 1 is. And it was amazing to see how much work went into giving it a better reputation. And also remember, I'm not trying to force any opinions on you. This was just a game from my childhood, very strong parentheses there, that deserved to get a praise card by yours truly. So in some regards, yes, I am a little biased towards this, and pardon me if I am, but I'll tell you one thing. There are HMs in this game, and HMs are the worst thing to be brought onto this green earth. That was such a forced problem. I think I'm sick now. Like, every game before Sun and Moon had HMs. What am I thinking? But at the end of the day, does Fire Red do what it set out to accomplish? Yeah. For all the reasons I just stated, and because of the fact that this game began the popular trend of recreating old generations. You see, Fire Red is what I like to call a confident game. This means it doesn't like to play safe and pay by the numbers, but rather believes in itself to pull off a lot of different, odd, and interesting ideas. It works more towards the game's advantage because it's a remake after all, and its confidence made it do all the right things when creating the originals. Plus, seeing all the things it altered and such shows the confidence it set out to prove. See, remakes like this, Sonic CD for Steam, Tomb Raider Anniversary, and Return to Castle Wolfenstein are all very confident in their abilities and fix the problems their originals had. But at the same time, they're also celebrating those games because even though they're kinda dated, a lot of people were introduced into gaming and fell in love with these franchises because of them. And while some remakes don't always pay a tribute like this, it's always nice to find the ones that do, and much more as a result.
Well, if there's anything this video taught us is that don't take things from strangers. I'm definitely unsubscribing to Nerdbots after this. Isn't that right, Mike? You wanna know something funny? I stole that from a friend who watches my videos. Now he's gonna want that back.